Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Well, in this special presentation, we're going to go over a year in review, have a look at what we got right and wrong from our predictions in 2017, and a look forward into 2019. So I hope you've all had a great Christmas break for those that are celebrating. Hopefully everyone's had a little bit of time off. But last year we did this same video, and one of the things we predicted were the correlations breaking between all the different coins, and we probably couldn't have been more wrong. Everything has displayed strong correlation to Bitcoin. Even the best performing assets are still down 50 or 60% from their highs. We know that everything has just followed Bitcoin up and down over time this year. So the second prediction we made was the rise of stable coins. So US dollar Tether hadn't been very transparent, and my number one pick was Maker, and that has performed extremely well this year. It has been the best performing coin along with Binance tokens. So I think that theme is going to continue. People are going to realize the importance of decentralization because we've had a lot of centralized US dollar coins spring up, and I think one by one we're going to hear these stories of accounts being frozen or whatnot, and people are going to move to the decentralized stable coins, which are playing an important role until Bitcoin, scales well and grows in size and has decreased volatility. Now, the next prediction we made was that scams would implode. And it's funny to believe that only this time last year, people were still defending, BitConnect, USI Tech, all these compound high growth returns being promised. And that one came very, very true. And we're already starting to see, the next wave of scams. So keep an eye out for those guys. Protect your friends and family when they start telling you these promised returns. The next prediction we made was central banks, governments, and regulators are going to acknowledge cryptocurrencies. So there was a famous quote in 2017 that these things are too small to even give attention to, and that's certainly changed this year, and it's very much on the radar of central banks. I think that's one of my predictions next year. It's going to start to really have a strong relationship with their policy. What are they doing with money printing and so on? And that is going to be one of the big drivers of Bitcoin. So different governments have already taken different stances, and the big theme for 2018 was probably regulation. So 2018 saw a strong start with all these ICOs and altcoins, and then they really were the ones that fell the hardest. And one thing we've always said on the channel is that 99.9% of coins are going to fail. Now, there's estimates that 85% of ICOs were scams, and the remainder, a lot of those just aren't going to do what they set out to, where they run out of money, can't find the right talent, the idea is beaten to market by someone else. So all these things unfortunately happen in the real world, and we certainly saw a lot of ICOs and scams really fall hard throughout 2018, and a lot of that was due to that regulation. So the CFTC, the SEC, they've been in the news a lot. Australia has their regulations. We've seen Malta take a step in the right direction. So 2018 has really been that laying the foundations of which countries are friendly towards crypto, and we're already starting to see the innovation move to those. So in light of all that regulation, we saw rise of STOs. Now, not the projects themselves just yet, but the talk of STOs. If we can't raise these ICOs and, there's so many unknowns, let's do them as securities. And that's been the big theme for the back half of 2018. Everyone building out the infrastructure, so the custody, the exchanges, the paperwork side of things. How can we launch projects if ICOs aren't the right way about it? And I actually think the pendulum's going to swing back a little bit, but I'll talk about that later in the video. So the other thing we saw was the rise of something like Binance. Hard to believe that it turned one in the back half of this year, everything that they have accomplished. And we really saw the good exchanges start to stand out. So a lot of these exchanges are now being exposed for fake volumes and so on. And there really is probably only a few that that you're using, hopefully, that are true representations of good business models, reasonable fees, and very safe. And it's going to be interesting to see on January 3rd proof of keys if any of these exchanges are running fractional reserves, but I'll talk about that later. So other things we saw this year, as I touched on, was custody, Coinbase custody, and then every other man and their dog coming out and saying, hey, we're going to launch institutional options and hold those funds. So a lot of people were hanging out this year for the ETF, and all of them have either been pushed back or rejected so far. So a few different countries have their exchange traded notes, and there's a few little funds that you can invest in out there. 2018 was probably the year of a lot of these investment ICO funds and crypto funds really been beat up. We're seeing returns of, in line with the market, down 70 to 90%. A lot of those people that invested during the hype have really been hurt. So some funds are already shutting down. Some are trying to raise more capital, but it certainly wasn't a good year for those people. Next thing I want to talk about is all those wild price predictions. So, John McAfee's out there watching the clock pretty closely. A lot of these high predictions just didn't come to fruition, and not many people foresaw this bear market. So I personally was recommending to take some profits and take out your initial investment or whatnot, but I certainly didn't recommend selling everything. I didn't think the bear market was going to go this low or this long, and just about nobody did. So if you've got people out there that predicted this correctly, follow them. Are they going to be just as good in a bull market? So it's very hard to remain unbiased and to find very good experienced traders, because crypto is so volatile. Very few people thought it was going to go to 20,000. Very few people thought it would get down this low, touching nearly 3,000 at time of this video. So next thing to touch on is all those different forks that we saw. So a lot of people saying that, hey, this is the new ICO, it's easy to do a fork. I think what Bitcoin has shown this year is that it's pretty resilient. That anti-fragility, all these different coins that were, GPU mined, or we're faster, we're more private, we've got bigger blocks, all that sort of thing is healthy competition. And we know that the Bitcoin Cash ABC versus Satoshi Vision debate, that came at a key point on the charts and a key time during the year, and it certainly grabbed the headlines. But look, I think this is all healthy. We're going to see which of those survive next year. Bitcoin Private's recently been in the news for having a greater supply than they thought. Bitcoin Gold got 51% attack. So I'll touch on it later in the video why Bitcoin itself is so strong. Now, after we've had all this go on, all these forks, the price swings and all that, we had a lot of people doing their victory laps. Now, Bitcoin got called dead. Different websites will say different number, but at least 100 times in different websites and news articles, and a lot of pundits are doing their victory laps saying, I called it, Bitcoin's dead, the bubble's popped. So just remember who they are. I'm going to touch on that a bit later as well. Record volumes on local Bitcoins. Now, just because the price is down 70% in Western countries where our currency has been relatively stable, it doesn't mean that Bitcoin hasn't already changed the lives of people in Brazil, Argentina, Venezuela. You guys know the list, and that's the theme we're going to see continue. So there's plenty of good stuff happening behind the scenes. Record volumes in some countries. Lightning Network, nodes, channels, and capacity has increased 100-fold this year. And for all these different projects that are trying to scale, we have seen the first glimpses of layer 2 solutions. So on Ethereum, there's Loom Network, Amigo experimenting with Plasma, Raiden Network is now on the mainnet, as well as all the great things that Bitcoin Lightning Network has been doing. So we're already seeing layer 2 solutions, but they're not widespread yet, and that's probably a big theme for 2019. So as we get into 2019, what am I expecting this year? Well, I think education, professionals come into this space, and overall maturity of the market is what we're going to see. And as people get educated, become more familiar with all this, I think it ties back into one of those first points I made was central banks, governments, and regulators. What are their policies? And as we see, stock market volatility, emerging markets get into trouble, all the debt in the US and every Western country around the world, even the housing market in Australia has got people's attention. Well, how does money work? Why are we in so much debt? Why is my mortgage $1 million? And this move towards a cashless society that some countries are talking about, negative interest rates, when all these things are in the public, mainstream media, they're seeing them every night on TV. This is really going to get a lot of people to go down the rabbit hole, and I think that's going to be a pretty big theme for 2019. And maybe one country or even continent, in particular, really starts adopting, whether it's Bitcoin or another cryptocurrency. But again, that's just all leading people to want to know more about this technology. And people forget that Japan announced Bitcoin legal tender in 2017, and that really kicked off a rally. Or back in 2013 and 15, we had Greece, Cyprus, all these sort of things that really were the drivers for a lot of Bitcoin headlines to come out of it. Another theme in 2019 is the ongoing death of these ICOs. So 99.9% of projects are going to fail. We want to try and find the ones that have a great product and a great team. A lot of these other forks are going to really dwindle in market cap, if not die altogether, and people are going to figure out the importance of proof of work and Bitcoin. So the rise of STOs is something that a lot of people are predicting, but I actually don't think that's going to be the next driver of a huge cycle. STOs are going to be very similar to IPOs in a lot of ways, that they happen behind the scenes or with accredited investors. So I don't think it's going to be that huge hype that we saw with altcoins and ICOs last year. It's going to be very different, and that's where I think the pendulum is going to swing back to the ICO in some fashion and utility tokens. So some of these great projects that have been busy building out behind the scenes, that have great platforms and underlying utility, the token does have true purpose and value, people are going to realize that again. And some of these projects are now down, 99%. Everyone's just saying STOs are the future. They've completely forgotten about all these projects that they were initially excited about. So that's where I think we're going to see the rise of old favorites, projects that have been busy building since, even 2016 or 2017, that haven't really grabbed the headlines. And my big focus is going to be product, progress, and team. And I think the next altcoin or hype cycle is going to be news driven for people that are actually making progress, and hopefully those correlations break. So if your investment, the project you're following, hasn't had any good announcements and they're not making any progress, there's no good news, I don't think they're going to be dragged up tenfold, 100-fold like a lot of these altcoins were just on the promise of an idea or a white paper during the last cycle. So I think fundamental analysis is going to be so important, and obviously that's always been our focus on this channel. Now, when I started preparing notes for this video, I had that big players were going to get involved. Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, and then we saw just last week Facebook come out and say, hey, we're going to experiment probably with WhatsApp and some sort of stable coin. But as soon as one of the big guys move, do you think that Netflix isn't going to want to have a better form of currency if it saves them money? And that's the big attraction, I think. As soon as these people realize that this isn't just a bit of fun, a bit of an experiment, this can actually save us money. It's going to give us the adoption in another country that doesn't have great banking infrastructure. All these people with smartphones can now watch Netflix as long as they can pay with cryptocurrency or some sort of stable coin. So all these things are going to, again, be in the mainstream, put cryptocurrency and blockchain in the spotlight. And at the moment, there's the thinking that Bitcoin is a bubble or crypto was all just a bit of a fad and it's dead. And all these big guys giving it recognition are really going to change that public perception of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. So along those lines of the big players on Wall Street, I think we're going to see the custody. So all these people that have been busy building, I think we're going to get some indexes, that track the top 10 or 20, some funds. We're already starting to see that. Hopefully Backed does come online at some stage this year. And if we do get that ETF, I'm not sure if we're going to get that. I still don't think the odds are that great. If we do get those investment products, it is so important that they're not fractionally reserved, okay? There's no rehypothecation as we see, 100 claims on that 1 bar of gold, or people selling silver, an entire annual production worth of silver that don't even own any. I don't want any of that nonsense. We want money going into real Bitcoin or the actual cryptocurrencies. So I do think we are going to see the STO space grow, and it is going to be important, but it's not going to be that main attraction. So the STOs, the exchanges, the platforms, I think non-fungible tokens are going to be really important this year, and just the fractionalization of all these different assets. So again, it's just really important that there's different segments of this ecosystem that are all growing and getting cryptocurrency and blockchain under the nose of the right people. And the next thing I want to talk about is those Ethereum Standards. So everyone's familiar with ERC20 tokens. Everyone knew what one of those was by the end of 2017. But next year, we're going to see all these different standards that are being proposed and worked on now for non-fungible tokens, KYC customers, so you can only sell it to someone else that has the same standards and set up in their wallet. all these things are going to actually be really attractive for regulators, but again, it's going to be that professional space. But we're certainly going to see a lot of other Ethereum standards being developed outside of the purpose of just STOs. And I really think everyone is very nervous about Ethereum, thinking it's dead, it's not going to have any use case ever again like that ICO. But I think a lot of STOs are going to use Ethereum in some way, even if it isn't just to raise their funds. I think there's going to be a lot of use case for the platform and a bit of competition. So we're going to see other projects, other platforms come in and compete with that space. But unfortunately, if you're not an Ethereum fan, the facts are that it very much is the leader in terms of everything happening in the STO space and standards at this stage. On top of that, obviously scaling is going to take off. So we've already seen that 100-fold increase in the Lightning Network and the capacity of it. I've personally used the Lightning Network. I'm very excited in the coming weeks to be able to bring you a tutorial on one of the world's first, if not the first, user-friendly Lightning wallet. So I just can't wait to show you guys that. And if you tell your friends and it takes off, we can build that network effect, even if it's just Australia, but I'm sure the rest of the world wants to use this technology as well. So on top of that, we're going to see progress with all those different projects trying to scale Ethereum and all these other coins, which is absolutely fantastic to see. And it's going to give them hopefully the means to have that first killer dApp. Doesn't matter what it is. We obviously know money is a great use case for this technology, but the first real dApps are going to emerge that are user-friendly, that have good front ends. It's not slow and clunky on the back end, and that means people may not even realize they're using this technology, and that's what's probably most exciting. The next thing is, in terms of progress of all these coins, is probably privacy. So I think privacy is going to be a hot topic. It's in the news in terms of Facebook and people selling our data and whatnot. So we're going to continue to see hacks, breaches of our privacy. Privacy coins are going to be in the spotlight. That already started to happen a little bit this year. But even Ethereum is already starting to implement privacy features. I think there's going to be talk about Bitcoin possibly going down that path. It's always been on the roadmap. Now, that might be a bit further out, 2020 or so, but a lot of people don't realize that Bitcoin and Ethereum may be going private in the coming years, and that's going to be very topical for governments and regulators as well. On top of that, attack vector in terms of privacy, that energy wastage is going to be in the news like always, people bashing Bitcoin. Hopefully we can prove them wrong in terms of the importance of that energy expenditure and the amount that is going to come from renewables and continues to grow in terms of the percentage that comes from renewables. So that proof of work versus proof of stake debate is going to be in the news. We know that Ethereum is planning on switching in the next couple of years. So again, that's going to be in the headlines. And I think one of my big smokies for you is Ethereum Classic. Now, the guys behind Ethereum Classic have got a lot of sway. They own a lot of media outlets. They own a lot of Ethereum Classic in their investment funds. And I think they're going to start to push Ethereum Classic really hard as, hey, look at us, we're the real Ethereum, a little bit the same as the argument with Bitcoin Cash crowd saying, hey, look at us, and it can be really nasty in terms of how that plays out on social media and in the news. And I think we're going to see that dynamic between Ethereum and Ethereum Classic because there's a lot of money at stake. And as I said, a few of these guys own the big news outlets and they're going to push out articles to sway the public perception. I think proof of work is going to come to the forefront as how important it is. A lot of people are going to start to realize that there's not a lot of room for other proof of work coins unless they have very strong security or different algorithms, and a lot of coins like Komodo are already piggybacking off the security of Bitcoin. So people are very much going to realize the importance of proof of work for securing the network, and that Bitcoin is king. So every year we see these huge swings in altcoins and people think that Bitcoin's dead, and then it swings back, and I don't think it's ever going to regain that 90% market dominance. There's just too many projects out there now in too many different industries, and Bitcoin is competing for that store of value, medium of exchange, our money of the citizens angle rather than all these other blockchain use cases. But proof of work and Bitcoin, I guess getting a bit more respect that it doesn't always get, is going to come in 2019. On top of that, the halvening is going to be talked about. So every 4 years, the block reward halves. Litecoin has their halving in 2019. Ethereum is planning on reducing their block reward from 3 to 2 in January, and then the headlines about Bitcoin halving in 2020, well, this is the first time that Bitcoin and crypto has really been in the public domain. So I think that's going to be a huge headline, especially if we get inflation or, again, that monetary policy and money printing in different countries. Bitcoin's going to look even more attractive comparatively. So I think that's definitely going to be in the headlines next year, as a lot of the public aren't even aware of the halving yet. Finally, I think Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is going to be proven to be a legitimate new asset class. So everyone doing their victory laps and saying the bubbles burst and this was all a fad, as soon as it starts to take off again and we see real world use cases, whether it's different dApps, different platforms, STOs, or Bitcoin just really start to gain traction, once people realize that that's an asset class, and this theme of get off zero, whether it's 1% or 10% of your portfolio, people are going to want exposure once they realize that this is a legitimate new asset class. And human emotion doesn't change. And I think I tweeted out the other day that nothing gives people that same rush, that dopamine, that excitement when we see those big green candles and everyone's happy and making money. So it's been a very hard year, a very depressing and testing year, watching cryptocurrency go down so much. And there's so many people that have skin in this game now that are going to realize that, hey, this isn't dead. It's going to take off again. We go through that next cycle where your friends and family start to ask you about cryptocurrency. And this time around, we've got 10 or 100 times more people that are hopefully educating and getting people into this space. So that's my thoughts on 2018 and a bit of a look forward into 2019, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please hit like, subscribe if you haven't already, share these videos around, and thanks for tuning in, guys. Cheers.